Hello, welcome to YWCA Greater Austin Facebook Live event. I'm Laura Gomez-Horton, Clinical Director of the YWCA Greater Austin. For those of you who are unfamiliar, YWCA Greater Austin provides individual, couple, family, and group therapy services. We also provide care coordination, life skills classes, school-based services, consultation, training, advocacy, and we maintain a warm line. We have been in the Central Texas area for 115 years, and our mission is the elimination of racism and the empowerment of women. This week, we are participating in the Stand Against Racism Challenge, a national initiative of YWCA USA. Previously known as the 21-Day Racial Equity and Social Justice Challenge, and developed by YWCA Greater Cleveland, this partnership hopes to expand the impact of this unique learning opportunity across the network. The Stand Against Racism Challenge is designed to create dedicated time and space to build more effective social justice habits, particularly those dealing with issues of race, power, privilege, and leadership. People who are participating in this are presented with challenges such as reading an article, listening to a podcast, reflecting on personal experiences, and more. In addition to YWCA USA's participation efforts, YWCA Greater Austin will be hosting speaker events this week, including the topic that we are talking about today. Today, we will be looking at living wage, economic empowerment with special guest speaker, Mayra Juárez-Denis, Advocacy and Strategic Partner Consultant at YWCA San Antonio. Welcome, Mayra. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course, thank you, Laura. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Mayra Juárez-Denis, and as you mentioned, I work as the Advocacy and Strategic Partnerships Consultant for the YWCA. So thank you for having me here.
So Mayra, I know that your job is a lot around economic empowerment, especially economic empowerment of women. So I'd like to first start with just a simple, well, maybe not a simple question, but a question to kind of get us all on the same page, because we often hear about people talking about a living wage and minimum wage. And so can we maybe just first start to define what a living wage is? What do we mean by this term?
Yes, well, first of all, yes, I think like we hear it very often, but sometimes we're not really understanding what is a living wage. So in simple terms, I think a living wage is, the income that a family needs to provide for all the basic needs. That means housing, food, transportation, and any other items that are needed to support your family on a daily basis. So that's the living wage, what the income that comes to your family to provide for all those basic needs.
Okay. Yeah, I think, again, people hear about it and it just doesn't match up with the minimum wage. So my understanding is that over a quarter of workers in the US make less than $15 per hour. And recently, we've been seeing a lot more people asking to raise the minimum wage. What do you think is a barrier to raising the minimum wage? Why is it so complicated to raise that?
Well, and I'm so glad you're asking that, because yes, I mean, the minimum wage has been stagnated for many, many years, and everything the cost of living is going higher and higher, and is not adjusting. So why is this happening, and why we continue to see that as a problem, right? As a barrier, why people are not being paid what they need for their, because it's more than a want, it's a need. They are having 2 jobs, even 3 jobs, some people, to be able to provide to their families what just a decent standard of living. So I think one of the barriers is that it has been in the culture that cheap labor is available, and that institutions that are in power are actually helping to do that. So when we think about more barriers, it comes from not just the lack of education sometimes, so they doesn't help people to gain the skills they need, but even like people who do not have a degree, let's say, they still provide. We went over the pandemic, we saw the value of the essential workers.
Mhm.
All these people that might not have higher degrees, they still need a decent salary to provide for their families.
Mhm.
But sometimes the companies or institutions who are providing the salaries, they're not thinking of the value of these workers, and unless they are not there, and then they see. However, I think like when we run numbers and we see the cost of turnover, for example, of bringing new people when people leave, and then and over COVID, we saw that companies are realizing that it's more expensive for them to be bringing new people and training them again than to actually raise their salary. So that could be some of the an example of what you're asking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's also the phenomenon that there's so many employers right now that are trying to hire people, and that people are saying, no, I don't think so, because you're not paying
What I need.
what I need, what I'm valued as. And I think, like you said, people realized this during COVID, that it's like we were just working and working without getting compensated. And even people with degrees are not compensated.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. This goes, and you're mentioning the great resignation, right?
Yeah.
Because people understood, why am I giving all of my time and life being away from my family, from my children, if I'm not valued, right? And again, I think like the discussion here is also that people are wanting to work. They do want to work. They do want to bring money to their homes, but they want to be treated with dignity and respect. I think that's the other layer that they understanding. Am I being treated with dignity and respect? And this is where we go back to, we were talking earlier about the history in the United States. And we do have a racist history. I mean, we can give the example of the tipping, the history of tipping, right? Where people were, they were, you're gonna get any, unless you serve until the level I want, you're gonna get some revenue. So as you know, probably, you know, when you go to Europe, for instance, servers, they do not get a tip, because they have a salary that is like, this is the minimum we do. And then, but here we still have that, where waiters, they get $2 and something as salary, and then as wage, and then the tipping. But like, we had to remember again, where is all this coming from? So I think if we start thinking more about how, now that we are not, and I think it's an opportunity right now, as we are in a different set of mind with after COVID, that people say, unless I'm value, I'm not gonna provide my services. There is a turning point right now that we can work together as, you know, as regular citizens with the institutions and companies to see how can we do a democracy in an economy that serves everyone.
Right. You mentioned something there that kind of brought me back to a term you used earlier about cheap labor, you know, that people often take advantage of that. They take advantage of people's desperation. Like, they want to feed their children. They want to be able to, you know, keep their homes or their apartments. And so they're desperate, and they're willing to work for less than they should be valued. So I think that that's somehow embedded into our society, that like you said, through history, through how we have set up the systems. It was just a thought I was having.
I love that you bring the cheap labor aspect, because I live in San Antonio, and San Antonio was actually known in the business community that the incentive was, come to San Antonio because there's cheap labor, right? Like that was an incentive in the past for companies to come and invest in San Antonio, or come and open the companies here. because it's cheap labor. You're gonna have a workforce that you don't have to pay as much, and you get things done. So actually, over COVID, there was this campaign on workforce development, where the city now is investing in a ready to work SA, where they're gonna be investing millions of dollars to train people who were left behind by the pandemic. And then they're gonna, with a minimum of, once they graduate after the training, they're gonna get a minimum of $20 per hour. So again, going back to the now even $15, which is now sold as the minimum wage, we're realizing that even $15 an hour is not gonna do it. Like, we need almost 20 right now to live and provide for your family.
Yeah, definitely. Continuing on that similar discussion of historical, I mean, that we kind of set this system up, obviously, it's connected, why the existence of slavery, they wanted to have people to work without paying them. And, we still see the modern day slavery system that continues to keep people in positions such as that, whether it's trafficking, labor trafficking, things like that. So it's still very much alive and embedded in our systems.
Yes, especially in the immigrant community, we see a lot of wage theft, for instance, where people, because they don't have documents, or they don't have the protections that a person with that is documented have. There is a lot of wage theft in that community. People who serve in construction or domestic workers. And again, it goes back to our history in the US of how we have been exploited since it was founded. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. You mentioned the Great Recession, and I had also heard the term she-cession, the she-cession, because a lot of women left the workforce, especially because kids were being homeschooled or educated at home, and just for necessities, of course, for protection as well. What are some of your thoughts around that? Like how there's a gender gap, women are disproportionately impacted, especially women of color.
Yes, well, I mean, it's not news, right? This is not new that women there's a big wage gap across sectors, not just a specific, like it is literally across sectors where women are paid less than men. So this is a reality that we can see data in numbers. But overall, I mean, this is a problem that's still very present. However, I think there's some hope to this because, for instance, we were giving a presentation to some companies here in San Antonio that are interested in wage equity. And one of the presenters, she gave a great point saying that the incoming workforce, it's gonna be, the majority is gonna be women. Mm-hmm. And from the business perspective, it's in their best interest to start understanding the needs of women. If they want to have a good workforce coming into their places. And what does that mean? It means that you need to provide what a woman, what's important for her, which is, a good salary that provides a childcare, health insurance. So it's not just the salary itself, but everything else that you need to provide for your family with dignity. So that's what's coming. That's our upcoming workforce. So from the economist point of view, it is in the interest of businesses to start thinking about that, because if they don't provide that, they're not gonna get that talent from the women that are coming. So thank you for asking that. That's a great thing to explore. Mm-hmm.
So let's say something incredible happened and the minimum wage was actually raised. And let's aim high. Let's say it's to $15 and hopefully more to $20, like you said. But what might happen if we actually did raise that? Like, what might be some outcomes from that?
I mean, it would be very obvious that investment is going to return to the community. And I think like when you see it when you invest in talent, when you invest in people, that goes back to the community. The people are gonna, start spending more. They will do more housing purchases. They're gonna expand that stability to the future generation as well. So it's not just at the moment, but that investment, the return is gonna be obvious, not just at the economic level, but in society in general. And then at the end, when you invest in those basic needs of people, that community is gonna flourish, that community is gonna thrive, and it's gonna be a society that is healthy at the end. And I don't mean just in physical health, but a well-being of a thriving society. So I think there is so many benefits when we invest and provide the economic justice that we need in our society.
I feel like it's important for people to understand that piece, that it's everybody thrives when people are thriving, everybody benefits from it. I think there's this belief, especially like, going back to our history, that we promote individualism so much that it's like, you have to be independent and you have to be, an individual. And it's about you rather than about the community. So
you work hard, you're gonna be okay.
Right. If you work hard, you're gonna be okay. Yeah, we have all these things in our society, in our language, all these things that promote that, rather than saying, let's spread it around, let's spread things around, and then we can all be uplifted together as a community, as a society.
Yes. Yes, and then I think when sometimes, people who think more conservative about, what does it mean to spread, wealth, or, and I think like if this is beyond partisanship, this is something that affects everyone. So I think in other developed countries, they see that economic value that is more expensive for a community if you don't invest in them on time, that after we all pay in the consequences of if you neglect your community economically. So I think like it's also about the talk about power, that if building people economically, some people are scared that they lose power, but power it expands. If you share it, it's not limited. It's something that we can all benefit from. And sometimes we're scared of using that word because it has a negative connotation. But power is just the ability to act and to be able to respond to whatever comes to us. So if some communities, we have not been able to respond to those pressures that come to us, specifically economically. So I think when we understand that if we all thrive together, we all gonna benefit. There's a benefit for everyone, regardless of where you are.
So I want to shift us a little bit and focus more on you and, and what you're doing, because I hear that you're doing some great stuff. What are you doing right now? What within your work to help communities move more to an equitable workplace?
Yes, so the YWCA in San Antonio, they are doing this great, it's called the Wage Equity Business Cohort. And I was very attracted when I found out about it, because I saw the potential of how great this can be for San Antonio, and that could be obviously done in other places. But what we're doing is we have a group of companies and organizations who are championing the wage equity awareness. And this could be through first sharing their own experience on how their company or their institution is actually having equitable practices that supports wage equity. And that goes to even, you know, some companies, they have not checked, like, oh, I have not really checked this in a while in my company. Are we providing the salaries that we're supposed to? Are we comparing, you know, the women's and men's salary? So just even going back and check, like, are we doing this the right way? That's creating some impact. Some companies, they're even changing their salary after understanding the cost of turnover. For instance, we had an example in an organization that it's a small organization, it's a small business, but still had a decent number of workers. And then she realized, like, I don't want to lose my team, right? So when she made the numbers of how much it will cost to lose her team if she doesn't raise the salary, and contrary to bringing someone new, she raised it from 16 point something to 20. And that's incredible. I mean, that's so good. Can you imagine, like, the impact is gonna be in those workers? And until now, they're grateful about that their value. So we are doing that, and I think more and more companies and institutions are realizing the importance of this. So for now, like, we are gathering to start understanding their own practices, and then see how they can start bringing more awareness to it, to other institutions and companies that have power to do more in their community.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you mentioned that. I mean, I think if companies really sit down, or businesses really sit down to assess how much they're spending on advertising for hiring, and spend the time that's spent in interviewing new people and all that, I think they'll realize, yeah, why don't I just invest in my employees right now and keep them.
Exactly.
That's
that's one of the things. And then we also have the economic empowerment department, where they have all these programs and workshops to help women on small business entrepreneurship, or even tax filing, like basic things that help a woman to navigate the economic system that sometimes we're not aware with our own, experiences at school or in our city. So so they are offering many opportunities that also helps them develop some opportunities that impact their economic life. We are opening a women's live and learn center. So we're still on the works on how it's gonna, but the overall idea is that they're gonna provide job training to women so they can find a good job that provides for their family, and even having some housing opportunities to become a homeowner. So so this is some of the ways that the YWCA in San Antonio is doing, and we hope that we can replicate this in more than one city, because I really believe that there is so much opportunity right now to really impact the women in our cities and communities.
Yeah, I think it's just like re-envisioning what this investment looks like for people, and letting go of some of the old habits or the old way of doing things, and bringing in some new thoughts and some new forces.
And it has been there, right? Like there is some progress, and the pressure to change our economic system has been there. And I know we just have a few minutes left, but like I always remember, on Dr. King quote that is not out there a lot. We usually see the typical quotes from Dr. King, but I mean, since back then, the intersection of racism and classism and people of color are the ones who are more impacted of economic injustice. So this one stuck to me because Dr. King said once, what good does it do to be able to eat at a lunch counter if you can buy a hamburger? And I think that quote really brings like that intersection that, yes, I want you to respect me, that you don't judge me by the skin of my color, but I also need that economic justice that goes with it, because that's how you show me respect and dignity as a human being. So so thank you for this. I hope this was good for sharing a little bit more about what we're doing, and that people get some understanding of that things can change.
Yes, definitely. And I wanted to also just give you an opportunity to say, is there anything that you would like for people to consider or to do that maybe will help contribute to narrowing that gap?
Yes, I think like a lot of people want to do something, but they don't know what to do. So I always encourage people to approach their organizations or institutions that are teaching how to do a change, more than just talking about it, but actually doing something. So I think the YWCAs across Texas and the US, they do have many opportunities to take action. So I encourage them to go to their local chapter to see what are they doing. And the beauty about the YWCAs across the US is that they have many different programs where it can adjust to your interest and what you want to change. So go and check out your local chapter, the YWCA, to see what you can do.
Thank you, Mayra. And for everybody else, thank you for joining us today to discuss living wage and economic empowerment. If you want to learn more, of course, if you're in San Antonio, you can reach out to the YWCA in San Antonio. Maybe you'll get a glimpse of Mayra. And also, if you're needing some support, some advocacy, please reach out to YWCA Greater Austin as well. If you want to keep learning more, join us for our Facebook Live events. And if you want to continue participating in Stand Against Racism Challenge, we also have our monthly dialogues tomorrow on issues of racism and discrimination. And you can find that on our events page. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you next month.